So the Amazon is really the beating heart of global biodiversity, and Colombia especially stands out here. So Colombia is the country with the second most biodiversity in the world. 10% of known species are found here in Colombia. It's been said that if Earth's biodiversity were a country, it could be called Colombia. So really, really excited to be here. The other really exciting thing about this morning and today is that there's really no stopping the refi train. This is not comprehensive, obviously, but there is so much energy and so much vibrancy in this space. People are doing so much really incredible, amazing work that is really going to allow us to realign the global economy with natural systems in a way that really is just embracing Web3 and embracing what it can do for actual people and actual natural systems in a way that I think is just really special. And it's been so exciting to see this field grow over the past year and a half. And I'm just so excited to watch it continue. So at the Sustainable Blockchain Summit, we have two main themes. We think a lot about deep decarbonization. So this is how do we look at what our environmental impacts are, and how do we go through those impacts and reduce those impacts as much as possible in a way that's granular, in a way that's verifiable, in a way that gives us higher certainty and verifiability than anything people can do in Web 2. We also think a lot about regeneration. How can we use crypto economics? How can we use all of the tools that we're building to regenerate natural systems and fix what we're doing to the natural world? So I wanted to first go through a few different main themes here and things that hopefully we can continue to discuss throughout today and beyond. One of those themes is connected to that deep decarbonization, right? So it's really important that we clean up our own backyard. Can I get a hand for the Ethereum merge? Yeah. So, probably the example of this that everyone jumps to, right? I think, it is possibly historically, unparalleled that an organization has overnight decreased its energy use by 99% or more. It's really, really incredible. What can we do to understand, to decarbonize everything that we build on, right? So we do a lot of work on this in Filecoin Green. A ton of networks are dedicated to reducing their footprint and building the tools that they and other networks can use to actually reduce their environmental footprint and get to carbon neutral computing. So the next thing is regenerating ecosystems. Again, obviously these logos are nowhere near comprehensive, but I think there's a growing awareness in this field that we can use a bunch of these crypto economic tools in order to channel resources toward the work that really needs to be done in realigning the economy with the natural world. The next major theme is supporting people on the ground. So I highlighted a few organizations that are really doing this, doing some of the work to connect all of these tools that we are working on as technologists to people doing the real work on the ground to defend these ecosystems. In this, I thought this chart was a little bit stunning because the two countries in the world with the most biodiversity, Brazil and Colombia, have the highest rates of death of people who are doing that work on the ground. They call them natural defenders. Or environmental defenders, really defending ecosystems, right? And so that's sort of a sobering thought, right? And I thought this quote was on point. Each and every death of a defender is a sign that our economic system is broken. There's a war on nature, and the front lines are Earth's remaining biodiverse regions. And I think we need to sort of ground ourselves in that, and we should see taking these stories and taking this work that people are doing and showing up to help them as really within scope of our mission, right? What can we do to give them digital tools to prove what they're trying to do and take their stories and make sure that people hear them? And so the next major theme I wanted to cover is we should bridge all the things. There's a ton of standards organizations, a ton of projects that are working on taking these tools that we're building, which are often siloed into individual chains, individual projects, individual communities, and really trying to create bridges between those different projects and those communities. Also, I see some people taking pictures. If you want these slides, you can go to tinyurl.com/SBS-latam-22. And you can get all these slides there with links if you want references on some of the things I'm talking about. So that's the tiny URL up here. So let's bridge all the things. I'm gonna talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. What can we do then to measure rigorously? So there's a huge and growing consensus that these new technological tools that are really enabled by Web3, they're enabled by the way we work with data in Web3, are going to allow us to measure what's going on the ground and prove it in a way that is just not possible with native or with Web2-based tools, right? So again, I'm gonna talk more about this, how we can really use the fundamentals of how we work with data in Web3 in order to enable us to prove what's going on the ground in a way that's far more rigorous than other tools. Next, we have to think carefully about how we match impact with anti-impact. So whatever that means by anti-impact, right? These are a few of the organizations that are thinking pretty deeply about that. And again, we should ground ourselves in that, right? What are these standards for how we make these environmental claims? And how do we really immerse ourselves in these debates and thoughts that are going on in these different communities and take what people are hashing out and really apply that in our tools in a way that's really rigorous and really grounded? So I wanted to bring that last point, this idea of matching impact with anti-impact, into both of these two themes, right? So we think a lot, as I said, about deep decarbonization, and we think about regeneration. And sometimes those can be done in service of each other. Those are overlapping, but they're not the same thing, right? They are overlapping but different things. So decarbonizing one thing and regenerating something else, they're aligned goals, but the best way to decarbonize one thing is not necessarily to regenerate something else unless you've done a lot of work to be super rigorous about the claims that you're making there, right? And so I think this is something that we can have a lot of really good, productive, healthy conversations about as a field. When we are funding something by issuing a carbon offset, what safeguards should we put around that as a field, right? And I think people sometimes shy away from that point, but that's really not a problem for regeneration if we abandon carbon tunnel vision, right? So these are all of these different things that need to happen in order to better align the economy with a more just and sustainable world. And often there is this focus on carbon markets, and especially voluntary carbon markets, but there are a lot of things that are worth doing in this field that are not mainly worth doing in order to balance out an emission on a company's carbon ledger, right? So this should be really exciting, right? How can we direct resources to fix all of these other problems, right? Maybe carbon markets are pretty mature, which is one of the reasons that we have this carbon tunnel vision sometimes, but how can we think about ways we can direct resources to all of these other issues, right? What can we measure better? So coming back to that measurement, to provide a stronger social forcing function, right? So people pay more attention if you can prove the facts on the ground. And we have the best tools in the world to allow people to prove the facts on the ground, right? That's what this field is, and that's what this field is bringing to sustainability. Can we create a green, sustainable, just premium across every part of the economy? The green premium is when you can sell a product for more than a non-sustainable product, right? So how can we take things like supply chain traceability and apply that to funding this really good regenerative work that needs to be done? And what infrastructure for collective action is the most effective lever for change? What can we build that's really going to take all of these changes that need to happen in the economy and align them with this more sustainable future? So I want to get a little bit technical for a minute or two. So I would say that Web3 is about content addressing, and content addressing is about interoperability, right? So this is a Merkle tree. Lots of people in computer science for many decades have said, hey, if I hash my content, I can efficiently verify my data in the context of this very specific data structure. Right, so the idea is you have someone claims that this bit of data is part of this larger structure. You want to verify that. You can use crypto to do that. But people were applying this kind of narrowly. People were applying this within the context of their individual Merkle trees or other hash-linked data structures. And one of the core realizations of Web3 is, hey, that actually these hash links are ridiculously overpowered for that job people had been using them to do. Hey, if I hash my content, I can efficiently verify my data in the context of every data structure ever. Right, so this is extremely powerful. This is the core of, this is what content addressing is. This is, I would say, the core of Web3 at a technical level, right? This is like the fundamental tool, one of the fundamental tools that we have to solve these problems. And so this realization is sometimes called the Merkle forest. If you get the slides, you can go to this great talk on the Merkle forest. And the question is then, how can this give us interoperability in refi? And the idea is that if you have these two offsets, if they're on two different chains, you have metadata associated with these offsets, you want to understand, can I just do this operation on these two different offsets, right? I have this function, can I run it to compare them or do something between them? And if you just content address the data of those offsets, that's good. You can get that data on IPFS, it's available, you can verify it, that's great. But you don't actually know just from that if you can compare or do this operation on these offsets. Again, this is a little technical, it's about to be done. But if you content address not only the data, but also the schema that that data conforms to, then you are able to answer that question without having to do it on the fly. You're able to answer, does this carbon offset conform to this type, without having to download the data and just try to do that comparison, right? So this is a very technical point, but it's really, really important. And when we're thinking about interoperability, my claim is like this should be really core to how we're solving these problems. And so then, of course, then we can define these libraries of functions that allow us to do all sorts of things that just should allow us to achieve this level of interoperability that is not possible in Web 2. So this is one of the technical places that I'm really excited about. The meta point, right, is that radical interoperability falls directly out of how we work with data in Web 3, and we should lean into this when we are carefully designing these systems and structures. I want to talk a little bit about the role of financialization. I have, I think, 3 minutes, right? We should try to scale all of this really good work people are doing. We should probably not let economic variables like discount rates dictate what we're saying about the atmosphere, right? There are some examples of this. It's not a good idea. Let's get away from it. But if we can come up with models that use finance in the service of what's going on in the atmosphere, that's a lot better. Let's try to do that. I also wanted to talk about choosing carbon offsets. You're going to get an email after this event about the carbon offsets that we've sourced. We want input from you as to which carbon offsets you think we should get to try to decarbonize this event. So there are a lot of different properties of carbon offsets. People disagree reasonably about how important each of these traits are, right? And so the thought is, rather than just skipping to the end and telling people what your final purchasing decision is, where they have no visibility into what your thought process was for differentiating between carbon offsets and coming to a conclusion, can we build a process where we tell people what the supply is, we allow people to assess that quality, we allow the community to try to determine what offsets we actually want to use to decarbonize this event. And then when the budget hits that ranked sort of pre-order of different carbon offsets, we then have this gap that shows us how the budget is affecting those purchasing decisions, right? This is an experiment. The goal is to try to come up with ways of issuing carbon offsets and buying carbon offsets that make this really important data and thought process more transparent. So very happy to workshop this. This is an experiment. Please let us know what you think about it and whether this is useful for causing a race to the top in voluntary carbon markets. I wanted to just end pretty quickly by talking about seeing the forest for the trees. So there's a book I read 19 years ago that had a huge effect on me that was about emergent behavior. One of the key sort of quotes from this book is, life is more than just clockwork, even if it is nothing but clockwork. Even if you can reduce it to chemistry, it's not chemistry. You should think of life as something higher level and different from its underlying parts. Right, I think people in this space have an intuition for this because a blockchain is more than just signed messages, even though it is nothing but signed messages. The biosphere is more than just its subsystems, even though it is nothing but its subsystems. And I think that we a lot of us believe that the traditional sort of Web 2 economy has a problem here. It has a problem with emergent behavior. It promised us something that was greater than the sum of its parts, and by embracing atomization, by embracing extraction, it's delivered something that was much less than the sum of its parts. So let's keep this emergent lens on what we're doing. Let's think about how what we're doing is going to scale and what it's going to do to the world when it does. Let's build code and protocols and processes and companies that ladder up to something much better. Welcome to the Sustainable Blockchain Summit. Let's move fast and fix things.